Konnichiwa everybody, it is I, Musashi X, and I'm finally back on camera. Especially right after a lengthy hiatus. I wouldn't exactly say lengthy, but it's still a hiatus. After my vacations, yep, I went back to back. First going to Japan, and going to Anime Expo after that. But I'll be explaining both of those vacations on a separate video, so stay tuned for that, folks. And now that I'm back on camera, well, we're due for another marathon, folks. And this time, we're going to be talking about Disney video games. Now, when it comes to Disney video games, the first game that comes to mind would be the Kingdom Hearts series. Especially with the upcoming Kingdom Hearts 3, which has been on development for so freaking long, until Square Enix finalized the date to be January 29th of next year. I mean, heck, I was able to try out the demo of Kingdom Hearts 3, and from the looks of it, it does look very lit. But I'll talk about that more when my Anime Expo video comes up. Not to mention, because Disney as of late is known for buying out IPs like Marvel Comics, LucasArts, and probably real soon 20th Century Fox, Kingdom Hearts 3 is also the subject of featureitis, meaning an ongoing expansion or additions of new features in a product, resulting in a software bloat or overcomplication rather than having a simple design. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Duke Nukem Forever! Before the rise of Kingdom Hearts, Disney video games prior are mostly missed than hits, and are more like quick cash grabs rather than caring for quality. However, there are two companies who can get Disney games done right and make them fun to play. Those two companies being Capcom and Sega. I have so much Disney games that I'm going to categorize them based on graphical fidelity. So I'll be focusing on 8-bit Disney games for now, and for the record, I'll only review the games that I do have, so if there's something that's missing, it'll have to be reviewed in the future once I have it. So for this marathon, we'll be looking at 10 games to review. However, not all of the games will have their own separate video. And just for the record, one of the games that I'll be reviewing for this marathon is not exactly 8-bit, but it sure plays like one. That I just had to include it for this marathon. And I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. So without waiting any further, welcome to the Walt Disney Games Marathon 8-bit edition.
Good old Mickey Mouse. He was created by Walt Disney in 1928 and first debuted publicly November 18th in the iconic short Steamboat Willie, produced by both Walt and his older brother Roy Sr. But his actual appearance was also in 1928 in the short Plane Crazy, and it was made as a silent film and given a test screening to a theater audience in May 15th of that same year, but couldn't find a distributor to pick up the short. Mickey Mouse would go on to star in over 130 films, with The Sorcerer's Apprentice within Fantasia being his breakthrough role, and he would become the first fictional character to be graced in the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 1978. Mickey would be voice acted by many people, including Walt Disney himself, but the most well-known voice of Mickey is the late Wayne Allwine, who has done the character from 1977 until his passing in 2009, with his final role as Mickey in Kingdom Hearts 358 Days Over 2. Brett Ewan, sorry if I butchered the name, would later succeed him as the voice. In many of his appearances, he would be joined alongside his girlfriend, Minnie Mouse, who got her own Hollywood star, actually this year at the time of this video, his pet dog Pluto, two of his friends, Donald Duck and Goofy, with the former getting his star in 2004, and the enemy of Mickey and friends, Pete, sometimes called Pegleg Pete. Disney would spawn so many allies for Mickey that I would refer to his friends as his Mouseketeers. You can tell that Mickey Mouse can be everywhere, as his silhouette head would become an iconic image and be plastered to just about anything coming out of the company.
Nowadays, the only time you'll ever see Mickey or his Mouseketeers at all is either through theme parks like Disney World in Florida, Disneyland in California, or in my case, I went to Tokyo Disneyland recently in Japan, which I gotta say it's a really beautiful place to go to. So, I would include that to your itinerary if you're planning on going to Japan. It's really nice. That and the fact that you can also see Mickey and his friends in the Kingdom Hearts series, which I'm wearing the shirt by the way, but I will not be talking this series just yet. Real soon, but not just yet. Now, as I mentioned at the top of the show, Capcom and Sega are two companies that can actually get Disney games done right and actually made it fun, long before the advent of Kingdom Hearts as well as Square's merger with Enix to form Square Enix. However, today's subject, Mickey Mousecapade, while published by Capcom, it's actually made by Hudson Soft, the company that are behind the games of the Adventure Island series and the Bomberman series, long before the company got bought out by Konami. Now, I've only borrowed the game once from my cousin a long time ago, and I actually defeated the game once. Now, despite being made by a different company, it should at least be as fun as the aforementioned Adventure Island and Bomberman games, right? Well, let's boot up the game and find out.
When the game boots up, all it says is Mickey Mouse, which makes the title misleading, and just as you press the start button, you're immediately thrown into your first stage, which is the Funhouse, without any plot or reason given unless you have the manual, which says they're trying to rescue a friend that's been held captive, and not much else is given. Immediately, there's a door that needs a key, and you have to go from room to room in order to find a key for it. You control both Mickey and Minnie, and the controls of the game is somewhat awkward, as the only way to advance to the next room, Minnie has to be really close to Mickey in order to register. The Funhouse has some enemies, but you don't have any attacks, and jumping on them is not the way to win. Instead, you defend yourself with star shots, which you grab from the first chest you see. You use your weapon not only to defeat enemies, but you can also destroy objects to reveal items like a cake or a diamond, which both restore HP, fire at certain suspicious areas to reveal a 1-up, which are very scarce in this game, or if you fire at specific parts of a wall, it's either you'll get something useful like an invincibility fairy ripped straight out of Adventure Island, or something irritating such as a pink version of a flying enemy that takes Minnie away, which I'll get into later. Eventually, you'll get your first key, which for an FYI, it's not the key that you need to complete the level. Oh no, you have to defeat this cat and advance further in the stage. You'll then come across a section of the stage where you can also get the star shot for Minnie, so that you can fire 3 shots at a time. You'll then encounter the witch, who has the real key to exiting the stage, and as you notice, only Mickey is the only one that takes so much of the abuse. I'll get this out of the way now and say that this game is very short, but that doesn't mean it's an easy game. As mentioned, Mickey takes so much of the abuse, but Minnie remains fine. You do have after hit invincibility, yes, but that only lasts about a second, and touch damage from bigger enemies or bosses can either take away a huge chunk of HP, or mostly instant death. Aside from the Funhouse, you also traverse through the ocean in which tidal waves can actually hurt them, a forest where you have to find the right path to take, and each new area of the forest is a checkpoint, thank goodness, so you don't have to start at the very beginning just in case you get killed. A pirate ship with only 4 screens and you fight Pegleg Pete himself, and finally, the castle, where you have to find a key to open the closed double doors, and Pete once again impedes your path. In this game, Minnie is both your saving grace, but also your Achilles heel, and I'll explain why. You gotta make sure that she's close to Mickey at all times in order to advance to the next screen of the Labyrinthine stages, which are stages 1, 4, and 5, which is somewhat frustrating given the awkward jumps in the game. I stay close to the door as much as possible because in situations when I need HP items, sometimes the invisible force that I'm firing at might instead spawn a pink version of a flying enemy that takes Minnie away, and if that happens, I have to fire at a spot that spawns a red key that takes me to a room where I have 1 of 4 chances of rescuing Minnie. And for an FYI, each time you enter the statue room, Minnie doesn't always appear in the same spot, so it's a complete guessing game until you win. What makes Minnie an Achilles heel is that in platforming sections, which are stages 2 and 3, you gotta be sure that she lands on a platform or on solid ground alongside Mickey, because if she falls down in the water or a hole, Mickey goes down with her as if he has a lifelink and loses a life. Similarly to Dragon Ball, that if Piccolo dies, Kami goes along for the ride to the afterlife and vice versa. Yeah, it's an awkward reference, I know. On the plus side, Minnie doesn't take any damage whatsoever on her person, so you can take advantage of the programming to make some bosses feel like chumps, such as in stage 4, assuming if you have the star shot for Minnie, if you can get her up the ladder just right, you can keep firing until Pete goes down. But don't think for a second that the bosses are easy, as they fire their own shots, with most of them without a set pattern, and what's worse is that they can negate your shots, so you better hope that you can make your shots count before you get killed, especially when I nearly lost at stage 3. By the time I reach the castle, I'm already at 0 lives. Yeah, I may have defeated this game years ago, but with passing years come along times of me being rusty and losing my own edge, and what the heck? That is so freaking cheap! I defeated Peg Leg Pete just to pass through, and I really don't want to risk losing Minnie to that statue room again, so I wanted to go back to find another safe room for HP items, only for him to respawn again? That's just terrible programming! And don't get me started with Maleficent or the Queen of Hearts if you're playing the Japanese version. She negates your shots relentlessly, and you can't get a clear shot of her before she mercilessly takes both mice out. And what's worse is that once you used up your last life, it's game over and back to the beginning. So my saving grace is to hopefully find another HP item to ensure that I'm ready for her again. But by some miracle, I was able to find a fairy, which upon getting it, I had to make a mad dash back to Maleficent, and just like in Adventure Island, the invisibility only stops when the fairy flies out of view, which I did to one-shot Maleficent easily. After the final match, you then rescue Alice, and that's the end of it, with nothing else given. In the original Japanese version, the bosses are much different. Like in stage 1, the boss is supposed to be the Cheshire Cat, and stage 5 being the Queen of Hearts, as the Japanese version was called Mickey Mouse in Adventures in Wonderland. But why change the characters in the US? That I'll never know. I consider the game's graphics to be passable, but not too breathtaking, given that the graphics are based off of Hudson Soft's other games in the NES, especially when stage 2 is no different from a similarly looking stage in Adventure Island. You could say that the graphics in this game are actually very plain, and I think it only works best on Adventure Island and probably no other game. As for the music, it's overly repetitive and not exactly that you would want on your smartphone. It may be childish in nature, but very forgettable. Other games in this marathon will have better music than this.
In my opinion, Mickey Mousecapade used to be such a good game for me back in the day. But looking back at it now, it just feels so plain and shallow, with not much stuff very rewarding, and it's definitely not a good outing for the Big Mouse himself. So, I'm going to give this game a 5. Definitely not a great game that stars both Mickey and Minnie, but thankfully, later games down the road will actually make them look good. In this case, the Illusion series, and as well as a few more games from Capcom, but that's going to be a discussion for another time. Well, that's one Disney game in the books, so up next in the marathon, we're going to be looking at 2 games that stars the Big Duck himself, Donald Duck. So up next in the marathon, we're going to be looking at The Lucky Dime Caper and Deep Duck Trouble. Anyway, I hope you folks liked this video, and if you liked this video, don't forget to click on subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to follow and like me on Facebook, which I will provide the link below. So yeah, until then, this has been Musashi X, and I bid you all farewell. Take care, and stay tuned, everybody.